Hi everyone, welcome to another comic-centered, art-centered edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be talking with comics creator, artist Dave Lunk. Dave, thank you for joining. And there's Godzilla behind you. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, there's not only Godzilla, but there's also Kong.
Oh, nice, nice.
You had to get a few more kaiju up in there. Very, very happy to be here with you. And
Glad to
yeah,
have you.
it's absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I know that you've worked, as we were just talking, in the world of Upper Deck creations for them. I know that you're a variant cover artist and with works featured in different parts of the world, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and different places. Anything that currently has your creative focus that you'd like to mention for us?
I am currently doing a lot of commission pieces, but I'm also working on one or two more sketchbooks.
Mhm.
I want to, pay homage to my two favorite loves in the world, and that is the cosmic and horror.
Mhm. Mhm.
Specifically, the old EC style horrors and the House of Horror and DC and Vertigo and all of those titles, and so I'm really splitting my time between paid client work, paid freelance work for Marvel and DC and Upper Deck, and also concentrating on my own projects, which is primarily my sketchbooks.
Nice, nice. What led you to this world of arts and comics and creating?
That's a long one. I I grew up in a difficult time in the 80s in a very difficult country in South Africa, under apartheid, and I was the loner kid, blue collar, the weirdo, the kid that was into punk rock and very quiet. I used to hide away um, in school recesses, like in the library. That's where I was the most comfortable. And comics were always my friends. It's not that I wasn't completely social. I used to do a lot of wrestling and judo, and at the time, and so we found my tribes. I found my tribes very, very early on, but I didn't really click with a lot of the school kids because I was the outsider. And
Mhm.
comics for me was really, the saving grace. It really created this world around me where I could immerse myself in completely. And as kids do, we emulate what we see and we try to draw and we try to draw. And I never stopped. At the age of 14, 15, I really was determined to draw comics for a living. This was what I wanted to do. It was my heroes at the time that were a lot of these younger talents that were coming up, um, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, and all these guys were like exploding on the scene in the early 90s. And I
Mhm.
wanted to be them because they were cool. They were really cool. A lot later, like I would go back, discover Bill Sinkovich's run on Moon Knight, and I was
Mhm.
just blown away because I wanted to be more of an artist than just the cookie cutter, what everybody else was doing, normal kind. And Bill was just so expressive, and I was like, wow, so I
Yeah.
can do this. And when you went to I studied art at a university level, I was like, I walked in there thinking, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do, and there wasn't really a school for this or a school of thought that I could, people would, well, here is the comic course. It didn't exist
Mhm.
in my
Mhm.
time, and so I studied fine art. I really got into my anatomy and learning how to draw and illustrate correctly, and all the time while completing projects and stuff for university, I was doodling and Superman, Batman, and then a lot more of the darker stuff that, oh, Swamp Thing in particular was one
Mhm.
of my dudes. Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing was just one of the greatest things I had ever read in my life. And because also it lends very much into that horror
Yeah.
aspect. I've always loved horror. I grew up with horror movies my entire life. Um, then after that, I uh, I started developing my inking. I really wanted to get in. I thought this was going to be the easy way in the door, but it's just tracing. Come on, how hard can inking be? And boy, it was that was like about a year in,
Yeah.
total mind fuck. Excuse my language. I do swear quite a bit. I do apologize in advance. And I started inking. So, like, this was before the days of, um, you could find a picture on the internet. So it was a lot of like tracing out
Mhm.
comic work and then developing my inking style. And I, just as a hobby, I guess, but I really wanted this to try and get in the door of comic books. And I thought nothing of it for a while. Then I was working as a freelancer for a magazine company, doing some editorials and stuff like that, and art directorship in particular. I was the junior art director. And they came to me and said, listen, we've got this magazine coming in South Africa. It's launching. It's called DC Fan Expo or something, or DC Fan The Experience. And they need an inker for 6 pages. So you would have, crosswords and Hollywood gossip and stuff like that. But you'd also have a mini comic.
Mhm.
And would you, with various artists and who were also trying to make it in the business at the time. So this was like a dry run for future projects. And I was like, hell yeah, I can ink this. And it went well. I did a couple of issues. And all the time, I was making Xerox copies of what I was doing. And I
Mhm.
was sending them unsolicited to DC and Marvel.
Right. Right.
Because at that time, you could, until there was like, nah, you can't do that anymore. You'd have to either go to a Comic Con and get a portfolio review, or you could send in some work every month. I think it was 5 pieces you were allowed to send in. And after that, they would just destroy stuff. And yeah, so I did that for until from 2001 until about 2003. And
Mhm.
then I got the call. Like I got the call from DC and they were like, well, would you like to ink some international stuff and international Batman? I was like, gee, let me think about this. Yeah. So yeah, I did. We had a few independent uh, comic book companies in South Africa that were publishing licensed stuff
Mhm.
from Marvel and from DC. Things like Battle Axe Press, which are no longer in existence, unfortunately. And so I got those opportunities through those guys. And obviously, whatever I was doing, I was sending back to DC, to Marvel. And then on an international, well, Marvel USA, 2006, they got a hold of me. It was like, hey, do you want to do some cleanup artwork?
Mhm.
Just clean up stuff and do bland. I was like, yeah. So off and on, I've had an interesting 23 years career, I guess.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, absolutely. What's it been like working with notable publishers like that, working on these major characters?
I like to think that I'm always respectful to my editors
Hmm.
and to the people I'm collaborating with. Good lines of communication and show that element of respect between us. And really don't try and think that you're the best person in the world at the job that you're doing. There's always, for every one of you, there's about 10,000 that are willing to take that job and that opportunity.
Hmm.
So I try to keep that element of humility. I watch my hubris. I know my value and my worth and what I'm capable of doing. But yeah, I just like trying to be a decent human being to
Hmm.
especially to those people. You never, what's it that you never know which bridges you burned or how that's going to come back and slap you in the face. It's so I choose to be a decent human being. I don't think that's the hardest thing for a person to do.
Yeah. I'm very much with you on that. That's part of my philosophy as well. And uh, curious about part of being decent, part of being in a space is continuing to grow, continuing to challenge yourself. So you mentioned you're in a 23-year now career.
Yeah,
How are you continuing to do that, to challenge yourself artistically?
I I was very ill about 3.5 years ago. I ended up in hospital. There was what we had thought was a growth in my lung, turned out to be a ruptured abscess.
Mm.
I nearly passed away. And there was some unfinished work on my table. in my studio. And I was like, I was so adamant to finish it that that was one of my, and I know it's the silly little things that keep driving people. So I got home, I got back and I looked at it and I was like, okay, you've been given this gift of one more day, one more week, maybe,
Hmm.
one more month, one more year. How are you going to do what you're going to do to better yourself? And I just opened myself up to basically learning new styles, learning everything I could. If it was watercolor, which I suck at, I really do. I'm terrible at watercolor. Get better at it. Just expand your knowledge and every day learn something new. If it's something that you a technique that you see on a Instagram video, learn that technique.
Yeah.
Try and build up your arsenal, build up that bag of tricks. And you can see in my work from 3 years ago to now, it's taken such a dramatic turn. I'm using so much more mixed media, so many different techniques, stuff from masters to, as I said, people I see on TikTok that just blow my mind. There's a dude that's doing some beautiful Japanese style pin-up artwork with gold leaf and the,
Mm.
the most subtle watercolors. And I'm like, I could use that somewhere along the line. Let me
Yeah.
learn how to do that. Gold leaf, never again. It went everywhere, man. It was in my beard, on my eyelids.
Oh yeah.
It was in my shirt. I took a shower and there was things stuck to me. Never again. But everything else, I kept that in my arsenal.
The art was becoming part of you.
It was. It really was. It was just insane. So I'm constantly trying to grow, not only as an artist but as an individual. I'm currently trying to learn. I'm the worst. Like when I'm sit with my peers and I watch them drawing something, I'm kind of like leaning over, trying to like see what they're doing and copy a little bit of their homework.
Hmm.
And that's just how I am. I just really want to learn and expand my repertoire.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Uh, as a kid, you'll appreciate this being someone who also likes Swamp Thing in that world. I wanted to grow to become Swamp Thing, and so I glued like bark and things to one of my shirts. So that's my gold leaf comparison there. That's the
Yeah, yeah.
closest.
Oh, I'll never forget to this day, I knew like when I was a kid, and I still remind my mom, and I'll tell you a little anecdote just now about my mother. I used to dress as Flash Gordon because I was obsessed with that movie. So it
Hmm.
was like the tank top, the red one. I painted like the logo on it, and I said to her, if I can't be Flash Gordon, I'm going to be an artist. That is the
There you go.
truest thing. And I must have been about a year into the job, and I was sitting at my mom's place, and you must understand, my mom is this wonderful hippie kind of person that is just joy. She's my biggest fan, my biggest supporter. I didn't come from that background of the parents were saying no, no. She was very encouraging. She's
Hmm.
like, well, if you're going to study art, you better have study something else with it in
Yeah.
case the one doesn't work. So I studied fine arts and graphic design. I got my honors in graphic design. Anyway, so I'll never forget. I'm just getting my portfolio ready at her place. I can do some work there. And she comes in and she goes, you know what? I'm going to phone Stanley and tell him what a nice, good Jewish boy you are and he should hire you. I believe she made it as far as his personal assistant.
Nice.
I do believe so. And I was like, Mom, like Joe Quesada was the editor in chief, the chief at the time. Like, Stan's not even involved. And she was like, no, he will take the call from me. Absolutely take the call. And I was like, well, but yeah,
Love it.
she's always been such a fan. She's been such a fan and so supportive.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Shout out to supportive parents as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Well, final question is, what
yeah.
is next on the creative horizon? Please remind us of that. And where can listeners learn more about you?
Well, I would say you can always get a hold of me on social media.
Hmm.
I have a presence. I personally dislike social media. I much like I prefer interactions.
Hmm.
I think social media is a very manipulated space, especially if you're an artist. I'm not a video editor. I'm not a content creator. And unfortunately, the algorithms are such that you have to produce to get out there and to get seen, so that the algorithm gets fooled and shows you to a wider audience. And I really couldn't be bothered doing that.
Hmm.
But I am very much reachable on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, not so much on Twitter anymore. I much prefer the vibe of Blue Sky, just
Hmm.
because it's much more positive and constructive, and the community seems it's very new, and it's a shiny new thing at the present moment in time. And I really enjoy it, but I'm not on all that often. Projects, definitely going to try and get those two new art books going.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Everything cosmic, everything horror, and doing a lot of commission work. Hopefully, we'll be doing some new cards for Upper Deck, which will I love doing. It's nothing like testing out your old age when you have to draw on a 2.5 inch by 3 inch card and with a massive microscope, and that's extremely challenging for me. Because I work really big, and lots of ink, like splattering ink, and wherever I go, like at every Comic Con, you'll see where Dave's been seated, because on the floor there's, varieties of splattered inks and stuff like that. Then I have a few international Comic Cons coming up in the next few months. Um, a few here in Austria, funny enough, they're really popular and they're very well attended,
No,
and some
nice,
very,
nice.
very nice guests, especially shout out to my guys at Austria Comics and Vienna Comic Con. Um, or Vienna Comics, I should say. Um, a couple of years ago, it was Isad, Rebek, myself, James O'Barr. So it's always been
Oh
a
man.
really eclectic kind of gathering. My dear friend Mahmoud, uh, and so yeah, it's always a fun thing for me to attend Comic Cons. Hopefully, Prague, I think, is going to be in a couple of months' time,
Hmm.
and most likely, either London Film and Comics or London Comic Con. Up until then, I really haven't planned much further.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right. Well, many thanks, Dave. Glad to talk with you anytime. I am seeing some ink splatter over here, so I know that we've spent some time together.
Yeah, man.
And glad to have you back anytime.
Thank you so much for having me. You have a wonderful night, and we will chat again soon.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thanks.
Perfect.